Well, welcome into the latest episode of Palmerston North Boys High School Under the Grandstand. A couple of special guests today, old boys, generations of pedal power and many other things that they have contributed to the school, to the city, to the whole region. Max Vertongen and Lee Vertongen. Gentlemen, welcome. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
Max, let's start with you. Years at Boys High and a little bit about your backstory.
Yeah, well, I mean, I lived just around the corner from Boys High, which made it pretty convenient. But I think coming to Boys High, I always had a sports background, and that's the thing I liked about it. And way back in those days, I was pretty keen on rugby, so it made it, pretty much the place for me to go to. So unfortunately, I didn't land here for too long. I think I was out at the start of my third year, and that was probably something to do with a discussion I had with Ian Cahoon, and it was either rugby and whatever went with it at the school, or cycling, and I'd only just turned 15, and that was it.
So what started the bug with cycling, given that you were you would have been probably a first 15 rugby player in Coke's team, all those things,
Well, I think clearly my dad was a cyclist, my great-grandfather was a cyclist, and it sort of intrigued me somewhere along the line and put my leg over a bike when I was about 12 years old. And then when I came to Boys High, I was sort of cycling and playing rugby, and then won a New Zealand title when I was 14, and that was the start of it, so I had to make a choice. I really made my choice when I was pretty young that, I wanted to be a cyclist, because it was an individual sport as well.
Mm-hmm. Lee, what about you? Was that something you were, well, fourth generation, you were born to cycle, right?
Yeah, I always had that aspiration right from watching Max. I think when I was a year old, then we moved to Belgium, and you raced over there for a couple of years. Wow. So, I couldn't remember it, but later in life I did go back to Belgium, and it felt like I'd been there, that feeling. So yeah, growing up with seen, Anthony Cuff and Mike McRedmond and Stuart Emery all riding around Memorial Park, those memories, how could you not get into it, Yeah. It was I think I was bred into it. But I think my grandfather also he was always there to support me, to try and get me, he was there right through from the early stages right through to the end of my career. So having the support from Max and my grandfather Norm, it was awesome.
It is a great name. Yeah. So, and what about the Boys High side of things? Was it always sort of a lay down was there that you're going to come here, or was there, what?
Oh, so
given Max's journey,
Yeah, well, I think at the time we were living down at the butcher shop, Vertongen's butcher shop, just down the road here. Yeah. So, and that was, I think we were living out the back at the time, weren't we?
Yeah, we had a house which was adjoined to it.
Yeah, adjoined. Yeah. So, but it was I think there was a point where I was going to consider Wanganui Collegiate, and we went over there and spoke to the rector over there, and he said, there's no cycling program over here. So it was Dave Sims, who at the rector at the time, and we met with him, and I don't think there was a program here in the Boys High for cycling, but he said, look, I'll make it work for you. So at that time it was all reasonably new. I don't think there'd been a cycling team, and all of a sudden we had a cycling team in Boys High, and thanks to Rachel Wenham as well, she got him behind it.
Yep.
As well. Yeah.
And it's been a great program pretty much ever since. Is that right? I mean, Mike McRedmond, so many great people of those sort of names that were household names. Back in the day when the Evening Standard was in its prime and things like that. You knew all about these guys.
Yeah, I think the thing, what really made it for the Boys High was Mike McRedmond coming back in and putting a lot of time back into those guys, and of course we've had some great cyclists come out of Boys High. Yeah. So we've coached individually ourselves with some of them and collectively, but it's been great.
Yeah. Who was the guy that rode was Nathan Delvick? Was he? He was local, wasn't he? I don't know if he was Boys High. I was trying to think. He rode a few of the decent races across Europe on the road.
He rode the Tour de France. It's sad now, of course. He passed away
just
in an accident. But I can't be sure if he was Boys High. But we've had a
part of that scene, because it was absolutely. No, Mike's done an amazing job. I just want to touch on you've raised it already, Lee. The Vertongen, the name. Pronunciation is still a little bit of debate, because obviously when you're in Europe it was more the Vertongen, but back here, I mean, I just always used to hear about Vertongen butchers. That was the name. That's how I said it. Then when I started interviewing you and Max and following your career on the old 2XSFM here, I sort of came up with a hybrid somewhere just in the middle.
I think what happened there was my great grandfather, who had, with being a European name during the World War, back in World War I think, this is what I've been told, didn't want to be known as a European, so they started saying Vertongen. So it is correctly pronounced Vertongen. It's a Belgian name, and that when I started racing in Belgium, it was always Lee Vertongen. So I think that sort of carried on from my great grandfather, and
I was the same. When I raced in Belgium, it was Marcel Vertongen. So but back here we just say it the way it is now.
Right out. We'll settle on the Mackay hybrid, Vertongen somewhere in the middle there. So Max, I'm quite interested in the family business too, because it was just along here on Featherston Street.
Featherston Street, yep. And so basically, when I went from school, pulled out of school at 15, and so I was going to be a cyclist, so I had to have a job. So I went and worked for my dad, who had the butchery down the road, and so that's where it started. And then of course we expanded later on in life. I had a couple of delicatessens and moved to, went through that phase. That was in between being a New Zealand cycling coach, and it just evolved from there, really.
Yeah. Were they good days? Did you enjoy those days? I mean, butchers have got there was the Mackay family butchers of Appleton. It's always a part of a thing that I've kind of respected, because it's actually a pretty tough,
tough business.
And
what it gave you, Hamish, was a work ethic. And you can't get past that. We used to start at 6 o'clock in the morning. Maybe earlier, depending, and you work, straight through, no lunch hours, none of the fluffy stuff. So I always put it down to a work ethic, and that's what I felt was helpful for me.
And every last sale's your reputation too, isn't it?
Exactly, because you're playing with a perishable item.
Let's just talk about your days over the grounds here, over at the school there. What are your sort of your best memories of school?
East Block, I don't know. It was a bit of a blur there, because I was sort of focused on, right from day one, I wanted to become a cyclist.
So that was your whole focus, right?
I think I came
even
through
when
boys.
you're sitting in a class, you just daydream a bit of.
I don't think I excelled too well
in your chair when you're sitting.
No, that's right. No, I've got a lot of good mates, still good mates. It's interesting, you sort of go through Boys High, and it was such a long time ago. We're talking 30 years, but on the weekend I was hanging out with 5 or 6 good mates from Boys High.
And was there a gap in that time where you sort of might have lost a bit of touch with those guys, and then you get back in touch with them?
Yeah, naturally. I mean, I was sort of racing overseas, and then spent about 7 or 8 years in Sydney. So but we always kept in touch, and I think that's one of the qualities of that I one of the main qualities I brought with me from being a Boys High. Picking up some mates.
Any sort of teachers or experiences you want to sort of relay from those days that stand out? Because the cane was well gone by
I don't know. There was Mr. Errol Brookie, wasn't he? He was around at the time. I think he certainly
waved it around a bit, didn't he?
I saw a good caning. I think it was 92 or 80, 89, 91, 92, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I did see it.
What about you, Max? Your memories over there in the sort of 2 and a bit years you had here before you were cokehead, you sort of...
Yeah, well, I'm looking over your right-hand shoulder and looking straight at Ian Cahoon sitting up there. I only ever got caned once, and it was by him, which was quite interesting. But like Lee, you meet a lot of guys through your school years. You might not see them for a while, and then you catch up with them later in life. And I've got some real great friends, even now, that came through that system. You know, even though I was there for a short time, you still become friends and you know each other. You might do business with them or whatever it may be. But yeah, no, it's been some great memories. Yeah.
So what years were they?
Gee, it makes me feel old. Well, I'm coming up 76, so that's going back a wee bit. So I guess probably 64, 63, 63, 64.
So you might have, geez, that first 15 that you probably might have ended up playing with had about 3 All Blacks, didn't it? Loveday, Stevens, Burgess, that sort of generation.
And it's interesting, you know these guys, and you get to know a lot of the ex-sportsmen, from later in life, and you look up to them, and and you meet up with them, and then you become mates. But I enjoyed my time while I was here, but I have to say I wasn't a great scholar because, like Lee, I had my mind elsewhere, and you've got to remember that our sport is an individual sport, where rugby, cricket, whatever is a team sport, and it's not decrying either of them, but I had a bend towards being individual, stand by my own performance, and later in life I actually put that down to the butchery, being a butcher. Right at the start, because you got a work ethic, and you only relied on what you put in, not what anyone else put in.
And again, a bit like the butcher, you're only as good as your last training ride.
Exactly.
You got to, incredibly individual sport, isn't that? That's fascinating. What was your, I guess, your career highlight? What was the maybe it's a season in Belgium or an international competition? What stands out for Max Vertongen?
Well, there's probably more disappointments that I see, where I could have. And that's an individual.
There's only one winner, isn't there?
Like 2 fourths at the Commonwealth Games. You might as well have been 2 last. That hurts. When I look back on that, but I won many New Zealand titles, so they're the pluses on the thing. Funny enough, I got more of a kick out of being a coach.
Right.
And so the highlights came later after I retired from being a cyclist, and which is quite unusual really, and especially with this fella, I had a lot of fun coaching him.
What were those things that you think made you a successful coach?
I think I had empathy. I think you've got to read the people. Because you're playing with different aspects, and right when I started coaching, we just started bringing the women into some of the teams, and that made it, pretty tricky. You had to understand, you had to have empathy for them, but I think just reading the cyclists and knowing, what you've been through. You've been there, you've done that, you've been at the top, so you know what they're going through when they're hurting, and so there's so many ups and downs. And I mean, highlights, Anthony Cuff breaking a world record.
World record. Remember that front page of the Evening Standard,
we went, just him, myself, and a mechanic. We went to Mexico, had no idea what we were doing, and he breaks a world record. So I guess there's a lot of those things.
What influenced this fella on you, Lee? Well, talk us through his strengths, and if there's the odd weakness.
There's a lot of arguments, throughout the process, but and he used to step back. But I think, to be fair, it was both my father and my grandfather. Max was running a business at the time, and I was out there training. So it was my grandfather that set the goals with me, and said, the Olympics are 4 years away, that's a good goal to aim for, and you got this and this in between. So and I think it was Max on the technical side, having the experience as the coach, who got me, both of them helped me get there. So yeah, no, it was good.
A few arguments.
Yeah, a few arguments.
Disagreements.
I can remember a lot of arguments. I remember a few crashes along the way.
Did you have a good spill?
I had a lot of spills. Yeah, broken bones.
Because that's the thing that I just
Yeah.
What was the worst one you had?
It would have to be Tour Wellington coming into a sprint where I think Graham Miller and Robbie McEwen and everyone was going for the line, and I think I was sitting. I think I was sitting back like this, and I went to go around somebody. And Robbie McEwen shot between me with 72 km an hour out of the seat. Volcanic chip road, and I remember hitting the ground, and I think I blacked out, but broke collarbones and arm, and one of the guys said, "I've never seen sparks during the daytime." And that was
72 k's an hour.
72
I don't think I ever went that fast downhill. That's incredible.
That was a messy one. Yeah.
Career highlight?
Oh, it'd have to be the hour record. I sort of held the hour record. Actually, it just got broken this year. Held it for 28 years or 26 years. That was on Wanganui. Still, I think is still the fastest outdoor at sea level.
Wow.
So yeah, that was a good one.
So where does that? So that's just been broken recently.
Just recently, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's a world class, globally
that was
attested time. There'll always be.
Yeah. And I remember, it was Graham O'Brien. I don't know if you know the name, but he was an eccentric Scottish guy who made his bike out of washing machine parts, and he came over, and I ended up getting. I've got that bike on my wall, by the way, and there's a movie made about him, and so he came over, and he said, right, you've got to attack the New Zealand hour record. And I remember we went over to Wanganui, and I don't think there was anyone even really there. It was just a timekeeper,
and so we went there, and there were just the local officials. I always remember it because Graham O'Brien said to me, he said, mate, we're going to set this, how far we're going to go, because it's all on the distance in 1 hour, how far you can go. And so I set the distance, and he said, no, if you set that distance, he'll only go that distance. You have to push him and push him out, because he'd raced him during a carnival period of 2 weeks prior, and he said he's in great form. So we pushed it out, and he was right, but it was all done.
I think I had to go about a week before, but blew a tyre halfway through, and then so we attacked it. We waited for a nice day, which was nice warm, I think mid-February or something like that. And I remember it started getting dark, and they wouldn't, because no one knew about it, they couldn't turn the lights on, so they had to get all the cars to come up through the infield and start facing them around the track, so I could see where I was going for the last 15 minutes.
What distance? What did you do in an hour? How far?
50.236 k's and one from a standing start. So that was, I think it was about the 10th fastest at the time ever. Something like that. Still hurts these days, like the pain. Still feel the pain in the legs.
You still feel the pain of that? Where did it hurt the most? Lungs, legs?
I think I just remember getting off the bike and just everything, brain, arms, legs, everything. It was everything. I was gone. Put everything into it.
They say it's the hardest race.
Right.
On a bike.
Hardest record you can do.
Hardest thing you can do, because it's 1 hour full on, and you're using every bit of the whole way. It's not like a running race of 10 seconds or 20 seconds. It's 1 hour.
It's the ultimate cycling record you can have a go at.
I was going to say, just think of some other names now come through, Van Veldhoven and young Cam Stewart. The thing's carried on though, hasn't it? Here,
great cyclists come from Palmer.
I think one of the great regrets I actually see in the Manawatū is that when they were vying for the indoor velodrome, we actually had the funding here to get the velodrome, and we were the right place because we had all the right training fields, or should I say, with the hills, everything. We had Massey University, and Cambridge got backed by some top people like the rowers. Sarah Ulmer was involved because she lives up there. But we missed out on that, and we had the funding. They never had the funding, and I think it was the guy McCulley. I can't remember the.
McCulley.
Yeah, I think he voted for Cambridge, and that's what beat us. If that had happened here, it would have been huge for the Manawatū.
Oh, yeah.
But since then, we've produced great cyclists still.
Yeah.
So
without a velodrome. So
without a velodrome.
We used to have a memorial park, but that's sort of gone to ruin. And I still think that, you know, if we don't even need the $10 million indoor wooden velodrome, just something, you know, an outdoor bitumen or concrete track velodrome, just so the locals can get out there and get the kids into it and start racing.
Have a go. Fielding there, or is that
there is.
Yeah, that's I mean, it's a flat 400 metre track.
Yeah.
You need something with banking around it.
It's a good training track. Done many laps around that.
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
So it still existed,
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. I saw one over in Martin the other day that looked like it had been a cycling track at some stage, state of disrepair though.
Don't tell me about those days.
Right, today, Max, business-wise, life-wise, what do you get up to? What keeps you going?
Well, I'm sort of out of the business now.
Yeah.
I'm still a director of our real estate company, but you know, it got to a point where you have to decide: are you in or you're out? Mm-hmm. I've got Lee and my stepson, and they're basically the owners of it, with another guy who runs it as well with them. And so I spend all my time down at my beach house fishing when I can.
Yeah.
So I'm either drone fishing or I'm out in my boat, you know, one of the two. But of course, that's weather dependent.
You're looking pretty fit though, you look well, you look like life's good. Any battles along the way?
I've had a few health scares, you know, nothing major. But, you know, I keep myself fit within reason. Oh, yeah. I could be a lot fitter than what I am.
But you don't look, to be honest, you don't look a hell of a lot different to 30 years ago when I'd see you on quite a regular basis in the old radio.
I feel a hell of a lot different.
Same, yeah.
But yeah, no, I enjoy it. You know, I've got grandchildren now, which is great. Lee's got 3 girls. My daughter's got a girl. We've got my stepdaughter, who unfortunately just passed away this year. She's got a couple of boys, and they'll be out with us in a couple of weeks. And then Daniel, my stepson, he's got a little boy. So they take up our time, you know. So yeah, I just enjoy the family. We're very private. To be honest, we're a very private family.
Yeah. Do you feel a bit drawn back to here now as the years pass to the school?
Yeah, I do. I guess probably, and that's in relation more to what Rachel is doing with her old boys thing, and I get all those bits and pieces that come through, and I'm always eager to look at the photos, and I see the guys in there, and a lot of them I do know, and it's amazing. I actually read it all the time, so yeah.
That's fantastic. 3 daughters, Lee. Cyclists coming through. Any?
Oh, I don't know. We're still in the early stages.
Yeah.
You know, the oldest is 12, the youngest is 7. So I live out near the Arapuki mountain bike park out that way. So one day I'm trying to get them up there, but I think I'm starting to get close. Getting there.
Now the business side of things, good to have the old man out of it.
Yeah, I think he flip-flopped for a while, but no, he's...
Well, you put so much into something like that, don't you?
Well, I guess probably, Hamish, Joss and I started that probably 38, 39 years ago. Yeah. It's been a big part of our life, and that's cool. But I think you get to a point somewhere along the lines with the boys coming through, they've got to have a go, and they've done a great job so far. So you've got to decide, are you in or you're out? And so I'm still there as a director, there for advice if they want it, but they're doing a pretty good job. And of course, technology-wise, they're right up with it, which is way over my head.
Lee, the school's in Great Heart. I tell people, and there's a good, strong, I spent a bit of time still in Auckland, we call it the Palmy Boys Mafia, but the school was a good school when I was here. It's a great school now. What about the city? Because you're sort of at the forefront what's going on in people's lives? You know, how do you read the
great city?
health?
Yeah, great city. I love, you know, and that's why I ended up back here. I mean, I was heading back from Sydney. I spent 7 years in Sydney. Came back about 12 years ago, and my wife's from Sydney. So
how did you drag her from Sydney to here? Oh, well, that's a whole new podcast. I'm trying to get an Aucklander to come down here and join me. I think it's a good city to bring up kids. Yeah. It's got a great culture. It's got great, it's got great schools. It's a bit windy today, but that'll blow over and it makes you harder, overall thing. Mind you, that winter we've had this year with the long clear days and no wind, and it was stunning.
Pretty mild,
The last few weeks have been a bit ropey, but that's
it's a good city.
I think our reputation in Palmerston North got tarnished a wee ways back by
John Cleese.
Yeah, John Cleese.
Yeah, things like that. They're actually bloody annoying. When
it was a lot of bullshit. But look, Palmy is a good place, and look, where we're situated. We're only an hour and a bit down to Wellington. Up to New Plymouth, up to the Hawke's Bay. Beaches aren't far away. You put it all in perspective. It's a bloody good place, and we've lived here all our lives. So, are we going to move away? No, I can't see me moving away. That's for sure.
No, totally. It's good to hear that. I feel like the province, the city has its foundations and then the farmers and everything sort of morphs into it, so good to hear. I suppose a piece of sort of any regrets back from your school days that you might change, or advice that you might give to a young fella coming through who might have the same dreams as you, cycling, go to the top of the world, but what would you say?
Probably I should stick to school a little bit longer than I did. I think I left at the start of sixth form. It does count. It's a great school. I probably got out of there a little bit too early. But I did come back and spoke in front of the school and gave them my experiences from what I've been doing. So bit of advice, set your goals early. You can do anything. I had that in my head. I was going to go to the Olympics. I was going to become a cyclist. I was going to do this, and right before I even started at boys high, I was maybe 12, 13 years old. So now's a good time to start focusing on what you want to do in life. Set those goals, put some money aside, and start investing. All that sort of stuff. Start early. You got a lot of time ahead of you, and it's all ahead of you. So just start doing it. Doing it early.
Do you think it might have changed your cycling career if you had it another year or two here?
I don't think so, but I think now with the structure of the boys high cycling team, I would have. Had that been there, it was starting to evolve. But I ended up racing over in a place called Allentown in Pennsylvania. And there was a very strong track velodrome, circuit racing there, which was Tuesdays and Friday nights. Had we had a velodrome sort of set up here for racing, may have stayed on. I was seeking that sort of that next level of racing, on the track.
Have you got Billy Joel on repeat? Allentown. When you say Allentown, everyone knows Allentown, but they know nothing about it. And now we know it's got a great cycling culture.
Yeah, it does.
Fantastic. Max, your piece of advice around how you might have done your schooling different, or the things that you did well that you want to pass on?
Yeah, look, the only thing I'd say to anyone coming through now, you can manage cycling and school to a point. And then obviously it'll change. But I would say to any aspiring person, for goodness sake, it's different times now to when I was there. You need to get some sort of balance behind you to get you through, because somewhere along the line in sport, it's only a short period of time, and then of course it can just go with an accident or something like that. So stick to it. You can do the two, and then once you get down the track, then you've got to sort of branch your way.
Yeah. Would you say cycling has, obviously underpinned a lot of what you've done, but has it sort of been the major factor in who you are today and where you've come, your journey? Would it be?
Yeah, cycling has. definitely. Yeah. It's made me, as I said right from the start, having a work ethic, and cycling gave me a work ethic, because you're only as good as your last ride, and you couldn't hang on the coat strings of a team. Your performance was right there in front of it, so you had to do it. And I think that's the key. Would I've done things differently? Not as such. I think cycling's been great for me. It was good. Look, I've travelled all around the world with cycling as a cyclist, then as a New Zealand coach, and it's given me a huge benefit, even stepping into business. I could only say it's been great.
Lee, is there a good cycling community? Because there'll be some Boys High old boys who've watched this today who've sort of got the lycra itch. Is there, what is there in terms of? I'm talking about these guys who've had a few years away from, maybe cycling away from Boys High, who are looking for something. What exists for that guy? Say for the 40 plus guy that wants to.
Well, to be fair, I'm just getting back into it myself. So I've spent most of this year focusing on my health and getting back on the bike. So I don't know about getting on the roads right at the moment. It's just I find
that challenge. That's why I've given up myself. But
the roads aren't like they used to be, and there's now a bit of an online community with Zwifting or Rovi and these sort of interactive trainers. And
so the screen,
the screens, So that's a new way of cycling. But I still think the social aspect of it. There's bunch rides that leave on the weekends, and I think that's important for the the school to keep that sort of going, whether it is on the indoor trainers or out on the roads, or ultimately it'd be good to have a velodrome here with a sort of facility where you can go out and ride around the outside of it, and stay safe off the roads.
What sort of money would that take to get maybe just an outdoor, even a high quality outdoor track?
Just an outdoor 250 or 333 concrete or bitumen
what
track.
Sort of money
I don't know. It's sort of what I'll tell. I mean, the last guys that I know were probably Nelson or Taupo, and it wouldn't be anywhere near the cost of an indoor track.
I think way back in the day when we were trying to beat Cambridge, we were up for around about 18 mil. But that was for an indoor track. So look, I couldn't be sure on that, but there's enough people and business people here who would back something like that. I'm with Lee 100%, because it's the older people coming back into cycling. They've got they want to keep fit. And a lot of these tracks now, especially overseas, if they've got an outdoor velodrome, there's a tar seal around the outside of it, so there could be a 2K, 3K track.
Come do 30 laps or whatever.
You're right. One of the worst things that can happen, everyone's not that I'm trying to put people off on this, but the scary part is riding on the road. It's not the cyclists themselves, it's the crazy people coming up behind.
The one that's on the phone,
and that's the scary part. And of course then there's mountain biking, which is
Arapuki. You got that. One of the best mountain bike parks in New Zealand would be just up the back here.
So I'm going to claim complete ignorance around. So where is it? And tell me about it.
So you got a Kahutarawa Road, just out the back of Old West Road.
Yes.
You just drive up there for about 15 minutes, and you got some of the best mountain bike tracks.
And safe, and
safe.
Long to practice safety. But that's always the way, isn't it? You got to practice the safety to be safe. But I think that's. It's incredible. I mean, I was lucky enough to. I've got to mention one of the great characters who spent a bit of time around these parts, Frank Clavis. He got me into cycling in Auckland a few years ago, and I ended up doing the retro tour with Coxie from Wellington to Auckland twice. But I had 115 kilos, and now I weigh about 88. And I'd love to get on a bike now and go, what's it like to ride? Get in real shape. So you might have a project on your hand, mate. You might have actually just signed yourself up, more Max even. That'd be a badge of honour. I get coached by Max Vertongen and Frank Clavis. I tell you what.
Yeah, well, Frankie Clavis goes back a long way. First time I came across him, it's way back in '66 actually. Trialling out for the Commonwealth Games. I was only 16, and I was trialling out for the Commonwealth Games in Jamaica, and I raced him a couple times actually in the sprints. and it was touch and go. But I was, according to the selectors, at 16 years old, I was too young to go to the Commonwealth Games, so I caught the next round, which is 1970. But Frank did a lot for a lot of people round here, and cyclists, and of course I think he was the start of the pedal pushers.
Yes,
with
and
Gary Byers.
Out at Barney. But his boys cut. I mean, Simon Clavis and Mark Clavis and Hugh were incredible athletes, and you know, they used to go on big cycling journeys. Frank would take them over the summer too. But yeah, nice to mention him because he does have a direct connect to the school with his boys being here over those years.
Yeah, and he put a lot into it when, you know, through those BMXs.
Yep.
And of course with the cycle shop, you know, so that was the big thing when pedal pushers came in. You know, sort of put huge amount of expertise into cycling. And so yeah. Sort of
any closing comments, guys? One thing I sense about you is you both sort of had a time away from Boys High, but I feel like you're right back at the sort of the forefront of things now and enjoying the whatever it is, the first 15, the cyclists, whatever. You know, it's all good. I think we all just, I don't know, just enjoy the fact that we're a part of it and that it keeps going so well.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, I don't think I've actually been away from it. You're separated, but if you're watching what's going on and you're talking to ex-old boys, you know, you're never disconnected. But as I said, we're pretty private sort of people, and you, dare I say it, as you get a bit older, you start doing different things. But you know, they've got. I think one of the biggest things that I see with Boys High now, or especially the old boys, is what Rachel Wenham's doing, you know, and those trips all around, whether it's in Australia or in New Zealand. And so you feel a little bit connected with that, and then if you run into one of them, you know, whatever. So if there's a regret, probably that I should have, probably in my capacity, is come back to a couple of the old boys' functions, you know, if that's...
Well, you're fitting well enough, you know, Max, to be a regular.
I don't think I could drink with them now. I think they're too hard drinkers.
There is a certain school around there, isn't there? Leo, they're talking about, I just want to mention the new sports facility, the new pavilion they're sort of planning. I mean, that'd be great for the school, wouldn't it? You know, because we've always had pretty good facilities, but, you know, like to hear what Bruce Hemara has done with the rugby and everything, but that'd be pretty cool too, you know.
Yeah, great sporting school. You know, I thought I would have been back here with son, but I've got 3 daughters, so you know, I think I'll be, you know, the history here with cycling. Look at Campbell Stewart, just took out a silver medal at World Champs last week. You've got, you know, multiple, always generational cyclists coming through Boys High. So strong history. You know, don't think you can't do it. It's a very strong. You get a lot of support here with you know, the old boys and myself and Max and Cuffy and Mick Redmond, and you know, it's a good school.
Yeah. Fantastic, gentlemen. Been great to have you as part of PNBHS Under the Grandstand. Anything else you want to add? You know.
Well, I think probably just the history of Palmerston North Boys High School. I think we should be embracing it. You know, embrace it as much as we can. It has got a great history. Some real hard case characters have come out of here, whether that be good or bad, I don't know. But we should be embracing it. It's a great city, great school, you know.
Can you agree with that?
Oh, 100%, yeah, recognised, you know, around the country.
Yeah. Guys, it's been absolutely brilliant catching up and just finding out a little bit more and hearing names like Norm, you know, and the Cuffies and the Mick Redmonds and all these guys, and also to get a bit more of a, you know, to find out your story around the school. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
There we go. Max and Lee Vertongen, Vertongen. We'll find, you know, the Mackay hybrid on that one somewhere in the middle. But this has been another episode of PNBHS Under the Grandstand. Stand by for the next one.
Years may pass, but the stories remain. Old boys, young hearts chasing the flame. Supporters and mentors with pride so steep. Baby's got the legacy that runs so deep.